Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of the ILEETA Learning Lab. My name is Joe Willis. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for ILEETA, and I'm here today with Andrew DeMuth. He's going to talk to us about 11 concepts every law enforcement trainer needs to know. And he's going to present this at the ILEETA conference in St. Louis in March 16th through 21st. Andrew, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I'm super excited to hear what you have to say. And there's a lot of great content here. So without any further ado, right over to you. What are we talking about at ILEETA 2026?
All right, so the presentation is going to talk about 11 concepts that law enforcement trainers need to know, training concepts. And this really began about 2 years ago. I was putting together a presentation, and there just wasn't a lot of engagement in it. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for engagement. So I decided, you know what, I need to learn a lot more about engagement than what I do know. And I just started making it a point to watch videos and start reading on building engagement in classes. And it was one of those things where the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And it evolved into me wanting to learn more about training and more about teaching and more about learning. And as I just started diving into this and learning all these different concepts, I decided I want to put together one day an instructor development class. There's so much information here that's not getting out. Now, in New Jersey, where I'm from, to become a trainer at a regional academy, you have to attend what we call method of instruction. And a lot of states have something similar. And 6, 7, 8 days, and most of it's public speaking, and they do a great job. But there's not a lot of instructor development. They're not talking about training. So what I began to learn, all this information, I just found fascinating, and it's just so clear it's not making it down to the rank and file instructors. So I decided to put this class together, and I've always taught about leadership at ILEETA since 2018. So this was a big departure for me, stepping out of the comfort zone, speaking on something that was new to me, but something that I'm becoming super passionate about. So that's how it all began.
Awesome. So this is even cooler of a story than I realized, because I've known you as the leadership guy for as long as I've known you. That is your passion, and you're really good at training leadership. And when I saw this come in, I saw it as a great opportunity to have you come in, because you're a great instructor, but it is a departure from the norm. And hearing this background story is awesome. So you have 11 concepts that you're going to share with us. And while we don't have time to go over all 11 today, plus we want to save some of the good stuff for the conference, how did you get to 11? And then among those 11, can you kind of give us some high points, some of the ones you really want to talk about, you're really passionate about?
Sure. Well, interestingly, just backing up a bit, my first ILEETA conference, it was the first day, and I plotted out the whole week of every class I wanted to go to. I was super excited. And for whatever reason, the first block didn't have any classes that really excited me. So, and sometimes that happens. So you find a class, okay, this might be interesting. And I found a class on training being taught by Carrie Avery. So I went into this class. I'd never met her before, and it was absolutely fascinating. And to this day, every year, the first class I sign up for is whatever Carrie Avery is teaching. Again, and I think that really opened me up into the whole world of training beyond just getting up with a PowerPoint. So one of the concepts that sticks out to me the most, I would say, is something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And Hermann Ebbinghaus was a German psychologist from the 1800s, and he was a pioneer in the early studies of retention and memory. And what he did was he put together 2,300 one-word syllables, like L-I-X. So he wanted to make sure they didn't sound like a regular word. And he would learn the syllables, and then he would test himself in different time increments, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month. And his findings were fascinating. Within 1 hour of the training, he had forgotten 60% of what he learned. Within 1 day, 70%. Within 1 month, 80%. I'm rounding these numbers up a little bit just to make it easy. But those numbers are staggering. And I'm reading this thinking, all the trainings I've ever given, you're telling me after 30 days, 80% is out the window. So it's something that trainers have to be aware of, because there are a lot of things we can do to mitigate at Ebbinghaus, but we have to be intentional about it. We have to be intentional with how we're presenting and the design of our course if we want to mitigate that.
Ebbinghaus is definitely a foundational component of this. And I love what you said there about we have to be intentional about defeating it. And there are ways. And I think one of those things you're going to talk about, if I understand correctly, is just simply covering a subject, being the sage on the stage, talking at your audience is a guaranteed way to have Ebbinghaus defeat us, right? The curve get the better of us. When you talk about coverage, not being adequate, what do you mean?
I'm sorry.
So just simply covering a topic, and what are some of the ways that you can get after defeating that curve and getting ahead of it?
Well, if in the literature, the number one thing that they talk about is consistent spaced repetition. And this is getting away from the all-night cram session that they would do in colleges. It's about sitting down, reading it, learning it, and then several hours later, reading it again, and maybe several days and maybe several weeks. Now, this is not something you're going to get buy-in from cops, from students, if it's the 17-year veteran on his 17th pursuit refresher class. But if you're teaching motorcycle gangs, or if you're teaching, bomb disposal, something like that, they certainly want to remember the concepts that they're learning. So a lot of it will depend on the particular audience that you have. But consistent spaced repetition is the number one method. One of the other topics I talk about is adding priming and boosting to your presentations. And really just so important. And priming is what we try to introduce before the presentation, and boosting is what we try to reinforce afterwards. So with priming, you might do a class announcement to everyone on the bulletin board or in an email. Hey, listen, we have a class on pursuits coming up. You could sneak into that announcement. We're going to talk about the 9 criminal statutes for which you are allowed to pursue, or why only 2 police cars may take place in the pursuit. These are just New Jersey, but for example, whatever your state might be. So you could actually introduce 4 or 5 important concepts right in that announcement. And then 2 weeks before the class, we have a reminder go out that's actually a primer disguised as a reminder. And we can put in, maybe 3 to 5 other nuggets, something important that are important takeaways. The day before that reminder, the same thing. Then we start the class. You might have a fact sheet that we hand out as they begin the class. Then we might begin with a diagnostic quiz, an exam. And I wouldn't make it too easy. I would make it fill in the blank, something challenging, so they realize I don't know this. And we use that where I teach now from my Attorney General's office, and it's a fantastic tool to get them to the point of, I really need to pay attention to this class. I need to know these things. I didn't realize how much I didn't know. So that's the priming we do before the presentation. The boosting afterwards could be that thank you email with, here are 7 takeaways. It could be that memo we put on the bulletin board. And I'm a big fan of training bulletin boards. If you keep them updated and relevant and interesting, they're going to be read every week. You could also add it at the next training. And I think this is a great tool too, is beginning every training with maybe a 5, maybe a 10-minute refresher of the previous training or the previous several trainings, just some important takeaways. But all of that would serve as the primer. So again, it works into that same consistent spaced repetition.
Like you mentioned a couple of other really good concepts in there. One of them being that low or no stakes testing for effortful retrieval, right? Like that is definitely a way of getting after that. And the other thing is, tying current learning to already possessed and held knowledge is a great way to cause that transfer to be more effective. So when you do that low stakes, no stakes testing, you said something in there that I think is incredibly important. It should not be easy. It should not be a simple, fill in the blank sort of thing. The boosting thing, that's something I've never really given a lot of thought to as far as the intentionality. And so you gave a couple of really great examples, the bulletin board and the messaging, that sort of thing. Where would you say like things like roll call or, supervisor involvement as far as follow-on training, how important is that?
Absolutely critical. When you look at agencies, 20, and I did for my first ILEETA presentation, I did a survey. It was 20 hours, 24 hours a year, 30 hours mandatory. There was an article at the time that Chicago was going to do something groundbreaking, 40 hours of training a year. That's like 1%. When in reality, we should be doing two full training days every month with all the different topics. You could just imagine how much we could fill those days very easily. So roll call training is an outstanding way of bolstering your training. And I heard the statistic at ILEETA, it might have been Brian Willis, 5 minutes of roll call training every day adds 20 hours of training a year. And another concept I picked up at ILEETA was the concept of micro training. And it's getting away from this traditional thinking that training must be a 50-minute block or a 2-hour block, and understanding that in 5 minutes, we could cover a topic pretty well, and we could actually reinforce it over the next several days, or cover it even wider, whatever the topic may be. And certainly 10 minutes would add 40 hours of training per year. And a lot of time, that time gets wasted with the previous squad coming off the road, speaking with the new squad, and everybody having fun with each other. And that's important too, but I really think we should have some training in that time.
Dwayne Wolf just did one of these interviews with me, and that's one of the things he's talking about is roll call training. And he said exactly the same thing you just said, is that 10 minutes a day, 40 hours a year. Yeah. And so super important. Give me a couple of examples of micro training as you just illuminated there.
Actually, I didn't realize it was micro training at the time, but one of the things I did when I was a patrol supervisor is I gave everybody a list of the banks and a map, and without knowing what the address was, what title, what name of the bank. I think we had 14 banks in our town at the time. So if you heard First Fidelity and Trust, and they were switching all the time because one would close, another would open. So we might get a call at the First Fidelity and Trust. Well, which one is that? So little things like that to do during briefing training, or Spanish, certain words in Spanish. We had a large immigrant population. So it's limitless what we can actually accomplish. The placards on trucks, if in case there's a leak, at least get our people to the point where they know the most common ones if something's leaking out, or the colors, which is something we deal with very rarely, but something that could be critical if we see gas coming out of a truck. So really is limitless what we could accomplish.
Perfect. Yeah, that's kind of where I expect you to go with it. Although I like this, a lot of times when we think micro training, we think these really good, and there are some great videos, whether it's, whiteboard style or whatever. And I mean, almost Instagram like, where you're scrolling through and it's this entertaining history lesson or whatever. That's good micro training. But what you just described there kind of turns the dial even more, where you mentioned like the sheet with the banks, like what is the address of this bank, or where is that located? And that involves effortful retrieval.
So one more thing to add to that, even taking a video of a police involved shooting or some type of incident. I mean, those are incredible training tools. And I remember when I first came on, once in a blue moon, something was caught on tape, and we would analyze it to death. That one, literally today, you can't watch every piece of body cam that comes out. There are more coming out than you could possibly see. So these are great tools for training a squad and getting your officers. What would you do? How would you handle this as a supervisor? So it really is limitless.
And again, so much better than, Sarge standing at the front of the room and saying, quick update on this new policy. Here's what's been put out. Make sure everybody reads it on the bulletin board, sign the sign-in sheet. That's not training. That's not, so yeah, spot on. So you're going to talk about 11 of these phenomenal concepts. And, so far we've kind of brushed up against a couple of them. You talk about something called the rotate framework. What is that?
All right. So it's not a new concept, but we kind of just reframed it. And it's essentially rotate options, techniques, activities, tasks, and engagement. And the idea is to get away from that class of the 50-minute lecture. And whenever I put together a class, I have an Excel spreadsheet for every slide, and they're color coded. And I want it to look like a rainbow. I want all different colors, because green might mean group discussion. Orange might mean video. Red might mean individual exercise that they're doing. So we want the class to constantly evolve and the channels to change. So
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with lecture. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's super, it's an important part of training, but it can't be the only part. Nobody wants to sit through an 8-hour day of lecture. To meet different people, to work in groups, to have them get up and use different images and turn the PowerPoint off and walk to the other side of the room. Ultimately, we want to give our people an experience, an outstanding experience. And I think that should be the optimal goal for all trainers.
Yeah, and there's so much research out there that says that, designing your training with the intentional focus on a learning style is counterproductive to actual transfer of knowledge. So it sounds to me like by doing that rotate framework. So once again, let's so rotate the O.
I'm sorry, rotate. Let me just bring it up here. Rotate options, techniques, activities, tools, and engagement. I think I reversed two of the words before.
Awesome.
Rotate options, techniques, activities, tools, and engagement. And just, again, every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, we're changing it up. We're doing something different. But the important thing is each piece that we're doing has to align with the learning objectives from the beginning. We don't want to just start showing videos to make people laugh that have nothing to do with the training. We want it all to come together because that, training is the ultimate goal.
And so we'll talk that the Bloom's taxonomy, how to get to like what matters and that sort of thing here in a second. But I love what you just did there. And I'm a very much a whiteboard learning style kind of person, right? So that's how my mind works. And as I did this kind of visualizing it, I started to think about how you do those different activities. What are the activities that could apply here? What are the tasks that are, and how do you make that fit in? And so you said something, you have to be very intentional about the design of your training, and it has to be applicable to what you're doing. So I know you're going to talk about Bloom's, kind of illuminate that. And then, what is it, first of all, and why does it matter? And then where does what you just offered fit into all of that as far as your intentional design around rotating your approaches?
So how we do it really depends on the class that we're teaching. One of the things and you mentioned Bloom, so let's get that out of the way. This was a concept I always had a difficult time understanding, but it's a very simple concept. And my God, as trainers, we have to, Bloom's has to be a part of putting together a lesson plan. And the question comes down to this: what do we want to accomplish in this training? And Benjamin Bloom put together a framework where he had 6 possible goals: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. So is this something where we just need them to remember, or is it something where we need them to create? An example of that might be a train the trainer class, where we want them adding to the learning and being able to process it and teach it to other people. But think about that. What do we want to accomplish with this training? We have to ask that question. If we don't need them to create, and most of the time we will need them to apply, which is number 3. We'll need them to take the information, understand it, and apply the information. So it certainly has to be a part of the training that we create. One of the great things about ILEETA is you are going to see a lot of different examples of training. Several years ago, and I do this now, I've stolen a million things that I've learned there, where they come in and they have the sticky paper and they have the groups, and you put the sticky paper on the wall and the different groups work with the sticky paper, writing down whatever the exercise might be. And so we break our class up into 4 groups, and there's 2 sheets in each area, and we have different exercises that we do throughout the day. We get outstanding feedback from doing that. We tell them, listen, go over there, introduce yourselves to each other. We probably allow it to go a little longer than it should, but they're all talking. But that's adding to the whole, like we mentioned before, the experience of the class. So, and a lot of the things I've learned have been from seeing the different presenters in ILEETA. But as far as putting it together, you want it to be, like we said, intentional, and you want it to have purpose. So you want to design exercises that are relevant to your learning objectives. You want to design assessments that are relevant to your learning objectives.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think there's so much to that. And I like the emphasis on knowing going into it. A lot of times, and the number of times I see learning outcomes written as, we will discuss this, or you will understand this. There are far better verbs that align with actual taxonomy and better learning outcomes orientation. And so, with just a couple minutes remaining to keep this short and sweet, the experiential learning, you're going to talk about that. How important is it? What is experiential learning? Why does it matter? And how does it differ from a lot of the other types of training?
It's a concept that's been around for a long time, and essentially it says people learn best from experience. They learn best from doing. There are a lot of elements to experiential learning that we'll talk about in the class, but how can we get this group in this room from listening to actually doing? So one of the things, I work for the New Jersey Attorney General's office. I manage the CODIS program, and when we initially put our training program together, where we go out to law enforcement agencies, it's about a 2-hour-long program. And we would never have them actually collect the sample. And again, from ILEETA, we would show demonstrations. We would let them all see. We changed that. Everybody in that class actually takes a DNA sample from themselves or from their partner. And you just cannot do better than that, than having them actually do it. So no matter what it is, what the training is, we should try to find a way to have them actually do. And I actually have a framework that I create of how a class should go. And it right before review and exam, I have application. So whatever we've learned in that class, I think it's the 4th component, is application, where now what are we going to do where they can apply what they've learned? That's a great spot to put in your experiential learning, if time provides.
Ah, awesome. And so is that something you'll share with the folks when they come to your class?
Yes.
Super cool. Yeah, man, I enjoy your approach to teaching. And I think now that you've invested this time in putting this class together, it's only going to improve even more. So that's even better. All right. So as we get ready to wrap up this session together here, as well as I do, you're at the ILEETA conference and you're looking at that schedule, that block of everything that's available. And there's so many great options to go to. If somebody who needs to be in your class to get this information, and in a nutshell, a very quick thumbnail sketch, what are they going to leave with?
Trainers, the leadership classes I normally teach are great for rank. They're great for those who don't have rank. I'm a big believer that leadership comes from traits more than it does from collar insignia. But here, if you're actively engaging in training, we have to, we have to have certain knowledge. We have to hold ourselves to certain standards. And I think this is probably going to be the future of training, of law enforcement training, where it's not just going to be about public speaking. It's going to be more about instructor development. And there are certain things we can't accomplish, without having that, committing to that bachelor's degree, whatever we're doing. But we need to elevate our game. And, like Instructor Z on the PowerPoint side and putting together fantastic presentations with great imagery, great videos. So a lot of different things, and we'll talk about.
Super cool. Yeah, it's going to definitely be a good conference. I'm looking forward to seeing you and everybody else there. And I'm just looking at the schedule. I'm continuously impressed at the talent that ILEETA attracts as our instructors. And then, as well as I do, the folks sitting in the room are just great trainers, and folks like yourself engaging the entire room. Everybody learns from everyone around them. So, Andrew, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I'm certain that someone out there is going to benefit from this conversation already. And I am 100% certain as well that if they show up to your class, they're not leaving empty-headed. They're definitely going to get some extreme value out of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Looking forward to seeing everyone in just about 6 weeks.
Absolutely.